Okay, I'm going to try to see how far we can get in the Maamar today. As Hashem, finish it today. If not, tomorrow. If not, we'll finish it after Yom Tov. It's actually a Nasi Maamar. So we're trying to understand the idea, holding the question: if Brias Oilimus, if the creation of the world comes from Atzmos, the essence of God, why does it need the Aseret Dibros, the Ten Commandments, to be enclosed or to energize the Asar Maamars, the 10 utterances? The 10 Commandments are from God, and the 10 utterances are from God. Why is the 10 utterances dependent on the 10 Commandments, especially as Rebbe explains now in Shayechet V'Amunah, how the 10 utterances are not something that were uttered once, but they're continuing giving life and vitality to creation, and without it, the creation would cease to exist. So what's it dependent on the Seres Dibros? The Rebbe answers, to understand this, one has to understand first. This that the Rebbe Rashab, which is referred to as Adbor Nishmas Eid, his souls in heaven, explains in the Maamar Chaviv in Yisrael, the Jewish people are special or precious. The Pasuk says in Bechukaisai that if you're going to walk in my ways, or my chukim, I'm going to give rain in its appropriate time. Maamar, it's explained in there in the Maamar of Chaviv in Yisrael. The Jewish people, the Torah is called like rain. Like the idea that rain comes down from a high place to a low place, so to the Torah comes down and gives life, and so Torah is chesed. There's a lot of comparisons between rain, mayim, rain, and Torah. But the basis of it is there's a Medrash Rabbah. The Medrash Rabbah in the story of Job and Eov, it says that Omer Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol Oyer Ha'amur B'Eliyahu ben Bar Cha'el, I think that's how you pronounce his name, B'Yeridas Geshamim HaKosev Medaber. So Rabbi Yochanan says, anytime it says Ora, light, with regard to Eliyahu, the son of Barchela, I'll explain who he is in a second, Barchiel, is referring to rain. Rabbi Rebbe says, no, it's referring to Torah. So we see there's a connection between Torah and rain. Who's, just a quick note, who's this Eliyahu ben Barachel? He's a younger figure in the dialogue of Job and Eov. We have Eov when he goes through sufferings and how he expresses himself. And Eliyahu ben Barachel is protests that the elders, wise people, are not responding properly to Job, whether they're intimidated by him or don't have what to say. And he comes and he gives three answers throughout the end. This is in chapter 32 onward of Job. And he talks about, or who is this Eliyahu Barachel? We don't know if he's Jewish, he's not Jewish. I saw even somewhere that says that it's an opinion that he was Yitzchak Avinu. Again, we don't know when Job lived. So know when Job lived, make it easier to know who he could be. But somewhere it says that he was that it was Eliyahu ben Barachel is Yitzchak Avinu, is our father Yitzchak. Either way, in his dialogue to Job, which we're not going to get into, one could look at it in chapter 32 and onwards, the whole story. He refers to Ora, and the Medrash Rabbah says that Ora is referring to rain according to Rabbi Yochanan, and according to Rabbi Rabbah is referring to Torah. So we see there's the comparison of Torah and rain. The Medrash Rabbah says they're not arguing. They're both talking about the same thing. The question is if they're giving it the name of rain, or are they giving it the name of Torah? So therefore, when it says I'm going to give you rain in the proper time, it's also referring to Torah. So what does this all mean? The famous Gemara that says that there are three keys that obviously keys for opening gates of blessings or things, that other keys he gives to people or to messengers or to angels. There's three keys God holds on to: the keys of rain, the keys of Tchias HaMesim, and I forget the third key. So it says there's third keys that God will not give to a messenger. He holds on to them, and if he does, he gives one key only. Like the whole story of Eliyahu Navi, that he took one key and then he said if he doesn't have the second key of Tchias HaMesim, Then it's going to say two keys are in the hand of the servant, one hand is the key, one is the key of the master. And one of the keys is the key of rain. And sometimes we do find that there's a concept of rain being sent via messengers. Whereas in three maftechas, three kings are not given over keys and not given over to any messenger. It says v'shaleach mayim al pnei chutzos. So the word v'shaleach means God sends through a messenger the water al pnei chutzos. So va'inin, because that idea is hini omer zal, a rabbi of Torahs. Haaretz mehechen shaisa. This man, what basis does the earth drink water, take water in? The Jewish people do what Hashem wants. So Aretz Shaisim Mi Mayim Al Yoinim Shmi Al Rakia. Then the earth is sustaining itself from the water that's above the Rakia, above the heavens. We'll see what this all means. Bisman She'ain, well, the Jewish people are unfortunately not doing things according to Torah. So then then the earth has to sustain itself from the water reserves underneath the ground or underneath the heavens. What's the difference? Results based on what our rabbis have taught us. That when the world was created. So what does this mean? Okay, so first of all, we want to understand why does the Sarah Maamar, why are the 10 utterances or the existence of the world dependent on the 10 commandments? If the 10 utterances has its own direct, so to say, life force from Hashem. Hashem is the one who has to who's uttering and keeps on uttering it, as the Alter Rebbe explains in the second part of Tanya and Shayachud Lamuna, to keep existence. Why is it dependent on Torah? So to understand this, we're going to understand first of all what Torah is. Torah is like rain. They brought down a medrash that says, so we proved what Torah is rain from the story of Eob. Then we're saying there's a concept of that the rain, the world that gets water. It's either to get it from the water, the rain that's above the Rakia, above the heavens, or the water from below the heavens, depending on the behavior of the Jewish people. What is the difference between the water above heavens, above the Rakia, or below the Rakia, the heavens? What do we learn about this? The second day of creation, right? The waters were mixed, and the second day of creation, God divided the waters that were stayed on the ground and under the ground, and the waters that are above this heaven. So it's Vachilik b'nei. So it says in the beginning of creation, the waters are mixed. God separated. The pasuk clearly says that God separated the waters from above to the waters of below. The upper waters and lower waters. So here the Rebbe is going to say, the Rebbe is explaining something that when we open up the book of Bereshis, we talk about the separation of the waters, one should not think that there was just a general water. God deposited some of the water in the heavens and some of the water in the ground or in the oceans or in the rivers, lakes, and underneath the ground in the Tehom and the abyss. No, these waters were separate waters that were mixed. You ever look in the Amazon, you can see pictures in the Amazon where you can see when the rivers come together, you can see clearly these waters, those waters. You go to South Africa, you can see where the Indian Sea meets the Atlantic Ocean. So there are two types of waters. There's what's represented as Mayim El Yoinim, upper waters and lower waters. Until the second day of creation, those two waters, which represent two types of ideas, were mixed. How were they able to mix? So the Rebbe says, because the upper waters weren't so high, was so lofty, so to say, right? And the lower waters weren't so low. We'll see what this all means in a second. Gives an example. The high waters weren't so elevated. And the low waters weren't so on such a low level. Obviously, it's going to explain level of representation of in avodah or in service or in connection to godliness, right? Commercial, what would be an example? If you have a barrel of wine, you have the shmarim, the residue of the grapes that are in the wine. So if it's all mixed together, the shmarim that are there are two separate things. There's the wine and the shmarim. But because the shmarim and the wine together, and you haven't yet sieved it, you haven't yet separated the wine from the shmarim, so therefore you don't see so much. It's kind of clouds the wine, so you don't see so much the purity of the wine because of the shmarim of the residue that's in there. And you can't look. The shmarim themselves don't look so horrible. Why? Because they're together with the wine. They have a taste of the wine. But after you separate it, when you drain and sieve the wine and you hold up all the pulp. So nasa hayayin solid, so then the wine becomes clear. Solid is from clear, and the quality gets better because you process the wine to take out the pulp. The hashmarim and the pulp, yordim lamata, they stay with the sieved or separate from the wine. Then it becomes total waste. Whatever, if they have some sort of use, it's totally not the same level of use of it while it was part of the wine. So the same things about the heaven and earth. When the God created the world on the first day, the waters weren't so clear on top and the waters weren't so dirty on the bottom. Put it that way. But when they the second day separated the two waters, they mined the line between the two waters. So again, the waters were always separate, just like the wine is separate from the shmar from the pulp. But when you have it in the barrel, before you go through the process of separating it, it affects the wine and it affects the pulp. The pulp's not so bad and the wine's not so clear. Then when the God separated the waters, then the higher waters became very high and elevated and pure. When the low waters become became very, very, very low. Meaning to say in Vayidaber, in our connection to Hashem, the low waters that are matzmiach kol minei tainug, that plant, water plants things, that plants and gives growth to our desires and our taivas and our anger and all the things that the water is going to give life to. When it was connected to the upper waters, it wouldn't be creating such or giving life to such low things because it still has a connection to the upper waters. And so to the upper waters that represent purity are also affected by worldly things, so to say. But now that it's separated, the upper waters become pure and the low waters become tachasar yirida, the lowest level. You can't compare the waters before the second day of separation to the way the waters were after they were separated. So it was, surely it's much lower than the upper waters itself that was later separated. So surely the lower waters are much lower than the waters that now are separated and are elevated. Just like you can't compare the pulp after it's been separated from the wine to the wine after it's been purified and cleared and it's ready to sell. It's ready a quality wine. What does this all mean in Vayidaber? This is going to explain to us back to the initial question. What was the point of Matan Torah? The idea of Vayidaber Laymore, that the Sarasat Dibras come into the Sarah Maamar. So you know the idea is like this. My water is a representation of pleasure and delight and desire. The water, like I said before, plants everything of delight and desire. It depends. Desire itself is not a bad thing. It depends what you desire. If you desire God, that's the holiest level of time. If you desire holiness, shifts with that's what you have a tremendous burning desire for. That's holiness. And what gives matzmiach kol minei tainug is the mayim. It's the upper waters it's not just that, you have the seeds and you have the water. It's not just the seed, it's not just the earth, it's also the water. What water is planting here? When the water is matzmiach and it's growing from upper waters, then it gives life force to holy desires and holy delights. Now the lower waters have no connection to the upper waters. And what are they planting? What are they giving growth to? To tainug of the pleasures of this world. And everything's a creation of God. So this famous idea that says, where's the Zohar? The Tuner says that the mayim tachtonim that give life force, right? So they become an energy to negative or to desires. Everything's a creation of God. So they cry and they say, we also want to be serving the king. We don't want to give life force to the desires. Imagine the water is giving life force to every time a person doesn't have air, and every time someone gives in to their temptations and to their impulses and to their desires. The waters doesn't want to be the source of that kind of life. The waters are crying, and we also want to bring life to the king. We want to serve in front of the king. They don't feel like they're serving the king, although they're serving the king because of the benefit of what happens when a person overcomes challenges. But that's an indirect way of service. They're crying for that they fell so low, and now the only thing they're giving life to is negativity or desires. And therefore Hashem had to satisfy the water and say, no, you're also going to be part of the sacrifices, because we know halachically salt has the law of water. So the salt that we know that you could never, everything has to have salt. Every sacrifice has salt. Even the salt was poured on the altar's ramp, so you shouldn't slip. I mean, the salt was part of the service. And you can't hold back the salt. And also we have the waters that are poured on the holiday of Sukkot, the pouring of the waters, which brings the Simchas Beis HaShaleva. And this is why Simchas Beis HaShaleva, when we draw the water to be poured with the Beis HaMikdash, is such a joy, because we're bringing an elevation and satisfying the water that was crying and says, I also want to be serving in front of the king. The person who hasn't experienced the joy that was in the Beis HaMikdash in the time of the pouring of the waters doesn't know what it means to have joy. As explained in other Maamar. When the Jewish people do what Hashem wants, means they're connecting, and what gives them life is the Mayim El Yoinim, the upper waters, which means that's represented by the fact that the doing the God's desire is how Earth strays in Mayim El Yoinim. The earth benefits, because the Jewish people by Tum Torah Mitzvahs are bringing the Mayim El Yoinim, the upper waters, down to the world. Shalkabi Yerkir, that's above the sky. And then the flow means we're not just talking about the water that you pick up and drink. We're talking about what's giving life to the world. What's the world sustaining itself on? The energy of Torah. So therefore, there's a tremendous blessing, and like Torah is believable. There's limitless energy, the aura that comes down. It says, then the Geshem comes in its proper time, its proper way. This is talking about the rain from the upper rain, the rain that comes through Avodas Adam, the rain that connects when Yisrael Ois and Ritzayin Shamakim, they're doing what Hashem wants. It's brought down that if you have to use water from a sprinkler, drawn water versus rainwater, rains of water does a much better job at planting your plants. That the rainwater is better source for planting than it is if you have to use a sprinkler system. That it drinks from the rainwater. The main sustenance for growth and the best is the rainwater. Because it comes down exactly into the kind of power, much powerful, comes from heaven, and finds the right spots. It properly satisfies the earth. And for the growth is better. It's natural growth, natural green grass, the vegetables and the fruits are naturally watered. And therefore, so too, it's like the Torah that when you bring down the water, the reason there's water in the earth is because of Eis and Ritzayin Shamakim. Do what Hashem wants. That's a different kind of light that comes to the world. And it's so powerful that Mashiach comes. The rain is going to be so powerful, the rain of Torah, that even in Ilan Yisroch, which is Ilan Yisroch, which is referring to fruitless trees that don't give up fruit, like evergreens, etc. Mashiach comes, they're going to also give up pears. Why? Because there's going to be so much ore, like we said in this Eliyahu Barchel in Iyov says the ore is Geshem. According to Rebbe, according to Rebbe, both say it's Geshem and Torah. So then it's going to have another level of growth. And sold unto Torah, like it says, which is teach you a molim b'Torah to study Torah. Shitei molim b'Torah is like Amasham Rabbi Yechon. We read this Kshama Kasim Vayidaber. That it's the rain, the concept of the rain, which is representing the rain element in Torah. Kavanasa al Torah, which is referring to Torah. Kiridasa Torah lamati ashpa atzmis. When we bring Torah down to the world, it's another level of ashpa, another level of flow. So now we see where the Rebbe is going with this to answer the question of why is it or how is it that we need the Ten Commandments to be part of the Sarah Maamars. When the Ten Commandments come into the 10 utterances, it's like the rain that comes down from heaven versus the rain that's the water that's in this earth. Again, you read this at Torah when you're bringing down through Torah, you're bringing down an essential flow of energy from Hashem. And means therefore Torah comes into and encloses itself in the laws, the physical laws. That how do you bring a Torah mitzvahs? Is you put on tefillin, which is made out of skins, and tzitzis made out of tzemer. You want to get to the essence. The essence is connected to physical, because the seif ma'is machshavat chila is in the ma'is, in the action, not in the theory. And in the action where God created the world, there is where you could touch at the essence. That's why Yom Shachas, it says it's better to be in the world of it's better to be in the world of this world, better than all the chayalim above, because this is the world of ma'is, of action, because here you could do a mitzvah. This he answers with Zavu, this is what it means. Vayidaber Elokim is called HaDvarim Laymore, the Elokim, that the Dvarim Me'ela, through Elokim, which means the way Torah comes into Gashmias, and that's through the Seres Adibris, gives life to the Laymore, to the Son of Maamar, to the 10 utterances. Mashkasav Khan Shem Elokim Dafka. Why do we use the name Elokim? Which is from separation, from Gvura, from energy, from strength. Like the idea of the powerful rain. How do you? Where's the real flow? When the flow comes down through Torah, when the water from above comes down. HaDvarim is referring to the Ten Commandments. Basar Maamar and 10 utterances is like recorded from the Magid and from Chassidic. 10 Commandments is the upper ones. Basar Maamar and 10 utterances is Maim Tachtonim, is the lower waters, Gashmis. It means Gashmis the way it is before it's penetrated through Torah. As the Rebbe explains, Shemaim Maim Tachtonim Maim Chachmilah. Chachma said Torah mitzad atzma, but Chachma tatar bechinas hachachma k'mishin k'fish nimshachas b'ma'is separations. There's the Maim Elyonim is Chachma of Torah. The Maim Tachtonim is the Chachma of creation. And even though that creation needs God's undivided attention, but it's a different kind of Chachma. It's a Chachma of creating something where it's a Chachma of God's essence, meaning to say his essential, it's the purity of godliness. And the idea is to connect the Maim, but again, so then one's going to ask the question, why did God separate the waters if they have to be reconnected? Because they specifically have to be separated, to be identified as separation. In their separation, it's like the wine. If you separate it, then you could see the character of the Maim Elyonim, the Maim Tachtonim, and only then you could have the effect of the Maim Elyonim properly in the Maim Tachtonim, not in a way where it's just kind of waters together, where you don't even know that they're two mixed waters. You think it's all one thing. So you first have to clearly identify that this is Maim Elyonim, this is Maim Tachtonim, and then take the Maim Elyonim, the upper waters, and penetrate and affect the Maim Tachtonim. Have first understand clearly what is godliness, what is world. A lot of times we confuse the two. It looks like one big soup, one big mix. What's the difference? It's all one thing. No, see clearly the Sarah Maamar, the 10 utterances, see clearly the 10 commandments, and see how you're going to penetrate and infect the 10 commandments into the 10 utterances. And because the 10 utterances comes from the lower level of wisdom, which is kingship, royalty, that's why it goes all the way down, like Malchus goes all the way down. So because it's giving life force, they need strength from the 10 commandments. The Torah says it's like the original example. What does it mean? It's the original? The kadmoi, to the originality of God before creation. Because the Torah is rooted in the essence of God, above the way God is a creator. The Kadmon, the first of all first. Adam Kadmon, the initial man. Therefore, when a person studies Torah, you go back all to its root. Even though creation also is rooted in the Adam Kadmon of the thought process of Adam Kadmon. Because he creates. Nevertheless, it's only the external, because the whole world is external. The whole purpose of the world is external. The whole meaning, the whole existence of the world is, and its existence, its life for us is not the tachlis. The tachlis is that the saras hadibris should go into and affecting the saras mamaris. That from the level of Adam Kadmon, yes, God sees the whole creation. The idea is that doesn't change God's attention as shkacha pratis. The idea is that the shkacha pratis should be mechuzak and be permeated with the saras hadibris. The base of Perushim, the Maamar Chaviv in Yisrael, Shenitim Kli Chemda Shabani Ibrahim said, what was so, we start off the Maamar, and it says, what was so special, precious about the Jewish people, that they were given the tools that God created the world. That, which is the first explanation, that through Torah God created the world. And the second explanation was that the whole purpose of the world was for Torah. The fact that the Torah comes from, the world comes from God, looks in the Torah and creates the world, that's still the external of Adam Kadmon, of the initial man. But the Torah comes from the root of Torah. It comes from the internal of Adam Kadmon, the initial man. The idea is that the external of the internal of why God wanted to create the world should be revealed in the external of the world. Again, the idea is, put it in simple, non-Kabbalistic words, is that the Ten Commandments, which is the reason why God created the world, which is Torah. First, you have to identify it as Torah, and then show how that Torah goes and penetrates the world, whether it's Ben Adam L'Chaveri, Ben Adam L'Makom, in your Daled Amos, whether you're Yeshua Oil or a Baal Asik. Every person has the ability to constantly be penetrating this 10 commandments into the 10 utterances. The whole purpose why the external exists is for the revelation of the internal. And this comes about by infusing the 10 commandments into the 10 utterances. Again, like we do usually weekly, these Maamar are done kind of fast, short, to get an idea and a kuda. Should learn the Rebbe's a Maamar once a week or a sikha. I wish everyone a Chag Kosher B'Sameach. Kabbalah Torah B'Simcha B'Pneumis.